Hello, back again on the Top Recap channel. This time I will tell a movie's entitled Civil War. Let's get straight into the storyline. The story begins in the White House, where the president is giving a speech. Scenes then show terrible riots happening all around the country. The president talks about how victorious they have been in handling the situation, even though everything being shown suggests otherwise. In her hotel room, sitting on her bed, Lee watches the president give his speech.
Citizens of America, we are now closer than ever to a historic...
Through her French window, she notices an explosion but doesn't react. It has become a common occurrence. The following morning, Lee, a veteran war photographer, heads out into the city with her colleague Joel. The two arrive at a riot in the middle of New York City. People are screaming at officials, demanding water, while the police desperately try to keep them back. Lee witnesses another photographer being struck by a police baton. Quickly jumping into action, she hurries toward the woman, pulls her to the side, and asks if she is okay.
You okay?
As soon as the woman pulls herself together, she immediately recognizes Lee and looks at her in admiration.
You're Lee Smith.
Hoping to be of assistance, Lee takes off her jacket and hands it to the reluctant young girl. Suddenly, Lee hears someone yelling about a bomb threat. Reacting instantly, she pushes the girl to the ground, covering both their heads. A second later, a bomb goes off, engulfing the area in fire. The deafening sound leaves the survivors momentarily disoriented. As soon as the explosion subsides, Lee gets up as if nothing had happened and begins taking photographs of the dead bodies on the ground. The young photographer stumbles away, pausing to look back at Lee, who remains unbothered. Picking up her camera, the girl takes a picture of Lee. That night, Lee and Joel meet their mentor, Sammy, in the hotel lounge. After discussing current events, Sammy asks about their next plan. Lee explains that they are heading to DC to interview and photograph the president. Sammy looks at them like they are crazy and warns that they will be shot on sight. The elderly man tries to talk them out of it, but they remain adamant. Realizing they won't change their minds, Sammy asks for a ride so he can cover the story from the front lines. Exhausted, Lee agrees and gets up to go to her room.
A suicide pact. I want Charlottesville, the front line.
If Sammy wants a ride, I'm good with it. You two figure it out.
While passing reception, Lee is stopped by Jesse, the young reporter she had saved earlier. When Jesse thanks her, the exhausted photographer gives the girl some advice before heading upstairs.
Kevlar, and not fluorescent. You bet.
Once inside her room, Lee gets into the bath, but memories of all the horrifying things she has seen over the years flood her mind. Early the following morning, Lee heads downstairs to find Sammy and Jesse already inside their car. She confronts Joel, and the two argue about letting the young girl come with them. Joel manages to convince Lee on the condition that they drop Jesse off before reaching DC.
All right, let's go.
After driving for several miles, the group arrives at a highway littered with abandoned cars. Passing through, they reach a border checkpoint where they are asked to show their IDs. Once granted access, they continue their journey and eventually arrive at a gas station where three armed men are waiting.
Help you folks? Just looking for gas.
After negotiating for some gas, Lee notices Jesse heading to the back of the gas station. She follows and finds Jesse standing in front of two men hanging by their hands, horribly tortured. Jesse is horrified, at a complete loss for words. Hoping to defuse the situation, Lee asks the man questioning Jesse to stand between the hanging victims so she can take a picture. After Lee's group had departed, Jesse was frustrated with herself for freezing, angry that she couldn't even remember to take a picture.
Want to be a journalist? That's the job.
Hey, Lee.
What?
Although she is sympathetic, Lee warns Jesse that they will be seeing worse things moving forward.
I won't make that mistake again.
After driving for several hours, the group finally arrives in Washington, and the city looks like a war zone. Suddenly, Lee asks Joel to stop the car and takes Jesse for a walk so they can take some pictures.
Shoot it.
He's not dead.
That night, the group camps 508 miles away from DC and begins to hear the loud noises of gunshots coming from afar. While Lee and Sammy have a conversation outside, Joel gives Jesse a pep talk about the following day, lending her a friendly hand. The next day, the group finds themselves in a frightening battle between the resistance and government soldiers. The fearless Lee takes dangerous pictures while Jesse struggles to compose herself. During the altercation, one of the fighters is shot and killed, giving Jesse the opportunity to take a picture. The day continues as the resistance fighters manage to capture the soldiers and execute them.
Now let's get right on down to the...
After a terrifying day, the group heads to a stadium where hundreds of refugees have settled. After grabbing some food, Lee takes it to Jesse, and the two begin to talk about Lee's career.
And you became the youngest ever Magnum photographer.
As they talk, Jesse develops the pictures she had taken earlier, and Lee compliments her on them.
Great photo, Jesse.
The following day, the group leaves the camp and begins their journey, arriving at a small town that seems unaware of the Civil War happening across America. After spending some time at a local store, where Jesse convinces Lee to buy a pretty dress, the group moves on. During their drive, they are suddenly shot at and quickly take cover. Getting out of the vehicle and keeping low, Joel speaks to two military soldiers who tell him about a sniper hiding in a large mansion, picking off people one by one. The group finally manages to take the sniper out. When they resume their journey, Lee takes over driving so Joel can get some rest. Suddenly, she notices a car following them at high speed and immediately alerts the others. While trying to control their fear, they realize that the two men in the other car are acquaintance journalists from Hong Kong, Tony and Bohai. Tony decides to switch vehicles while Lee is still driving, and Jesse chooses to do the same.
Bye-bye, see you in Washington! Fuck you!
Bohai drives off with Jesse in his car, and the group becomes worried when they can no longer see the other car.
Where'd your guy go, Tony?
Just fucking around, that's all.
When they finally catch up, they find the car empty, parked by the side of the road. Getting out, they search for Jesse and Bohai, only to see them captured by men in military outfits. They also notice the militia members burying civilians in a mass grave, and realize they don't want any witnesses. When Lee insists that they need to go down and speak to the men, Sammy strongly objects, warning that these violent men will murder them. Having no other choice, Lee, Joel, and Tony approach the militia, hoping to reason with them.
What's happening? You guys over there, they're my colleagues. Journalists, sir.
The leader of the militia refuses to listen and executes Bohai first, then Tony, for not being American.
Yes, sir. He's my...
Oh, China.
When the leader is about to shoot Joel, Sammy suddenly drives their car out of nowhere, ramming it into the soldiers. Amid the chaos, Jesse is pushed into the mass grave, but the group quickly drags her out. They rush into the car and speed away while the surviving soldier fires at them. In the back seat, Joel and Jesse break down. Jesse loses her meal all over herself. After making sure they've gotten away, Sammy tells them he is unable to drive any longer. That's when they realize he has been shot. Panicking, Joel and Lee quickly carry Sammy into the back seat and race toward a nearby military base, hoping he can get medical help. As they drive through a forest fire, Sammy spends his last moments watching the golden flames. By the time they arrive at the base, Sammy has already passed away. The rest of the group struggles to adjust to the loss. Joel breaks down as military officers bring out a coffin to bury Sammy, while Lee sits aside, looking at the images she has taken. When she finally rejoins Joel, she finds him standing with two other reporters, looking frantic. Concerned, she asks him why he seems so erratic. Joel, his eyes glossy with tears, explains that most of the loyalists have surrendered, and Washington is left completely defenseless, except for a few, including the Secret Service. Shaken, he tells Lee that they are too late to cover the story. Sammy and their other friends died for nothing. Even though she is feeling down about the news, Lee decides to check up on Jessie and finds her sitting alone by the lake. Taking a seat next to the young girl, Lee asks how she is doing, and is not surprised when Jessie admits she is struggling to cope with everything they have been through. The two begin to talk about the friend they lost, and Lee explains that Sammy died in a relatively good way. His life could have ended much worse, as he never wanted to quit, even in his elderly years. After sitting quietly for a few moments, Jessie admits that she has never been this scared before. At the same time, she confesses that she has never felt more alive either. A few hours later, Joel wakes up to the sound of helicopters arriving. He watches as the army slowly moves out, heading to Washington. When he reaches the car, he sees Lee cleaning Sammy's blood from the back seat. The two share a quiet look, understanding what they are about to face. That night, the group sets out with the military personnel and arrives in Washington, which has become a full-blown war zone. As the fighting continues, a desensitized Jessie becomes more involved, forgetting about the danger and pushing herself to the front lines to take better pictures. Meanwhile, Sammy's death has hit Lee harder than she expected, making her fearful of everything. While Lee struggles to function, Jessie seizes every opportunity to capture valuable photographs. After a long and terrifying run across the city, the military group, including Lee, Joel, and Jessie, finally reaches the White House. As they take cover, the military blows up the surrounding wall, killing the remaining fanatics protecting the area. While helping Lee calm down, Joel asks the rival journalist duo if they knew whether the president was inside. The journalists explain that surrendered generals confirmed the president was hiding in the White House and was to be executed immediately.
What they're gonna do with him? Kill! No capture!
Suddenly, Secret Service vehicles speed out of the White House in an attempt to escape. However, they are immediately gunned down by the awaiting forces, and any survivors are quickly executed. While the others check the cars for signs of the president, Lee tells Joel that she is sure he is still inside. The group quickly follows the military into the building. As they move forward, they hear voices coming from one of the rooms.
Talk.
Flooded.
Inside, they find a woman who identifies herself as the head of the Secret Service. She tells the soldiers, who have their guns trained on her, that she wants to negotiate safe passage for the president because he wishes to surrender. Unwilling to negotiate, the soldiers shoot the agent and continue inside to find the president.
Just go.
Gunfire erupts as the president's last remaining protection attempts to fight back against the soldiers. By now, Lee seems to have regained control of her fear, returning to her usual daring self. She follows the soldiers with confidence, snapping memorable pictures along the way. As they continue forward, Jessie jumps into the line of fire to take a picture. Seeing this, Lee pushes her aside to save her life, but in doing so, she is gunned down instead. Emotionless, Jessie gets up and heads into the Oval Office, taking only a brief moment to glance back at Lee's lifeless body. When they finally enter the Oval Office, they witness the soldiers dragging the president from behind his desk. Just as they are about to execute him, Joel screams for them to stop and asks the president to give him a quote. Terrified, the president begs Joel not to let them kill him. Satisfied with his response, Joel steps back as if allowing the soldiers to complete their mission. At that moment, Jessie walks in and captures the final moments as the president is executed. Once she takes the picture, Jessie smiles and continues photographing every moment.